It's finally happening. The UFC welterweight title fight is now set. UFC President Dana White making the announcement last night. UFC 296, Colby Covington, Leon Edwards to headline UFC 96, like I mentioned there, December 16th. T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. It's finally happening. We've been waiting for months to hear about this fight, and the title of this video is, was Colby Covington right? There's a few ways you can kind of take that, and we're going to talk about that in terms of the optics of this fight in today's video, and I'm also going to give you my early pick and preview for this fight as well. But let's first start with the fact that this fight we knew was most likely going to happen all the way back to like UFC London in July, so it's just taken that long for this fight to take place. I would love to know behind the scenes why it took this long, whose fault it was. I know a lot of people blame Leon Edwards. I've heard other people blame Colby Covington. I want to know the truth here, why it took so long to put this together. I'm just glad it's happening and we can finally get the welterweight division to move on. But something that Colby Covington said a few months ago, I think kind of makes sense here. He mentioned that Jon Jones has kept him off UFC 295. Of course, 295 the month before in New York, that card with Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. Obviously, Colby Covington and Jon Jones have a ton of bad blood dating back to when they were, I think they were roommates in college and all this stuff. And, you know, Colby basically said that Jon went to the UFC and said that he doesn't want to share a card with Colby Covington. Well, that kind of looks true in a way, right? Because I think that you could have easily put Colby Covington and Leon Edwards on UFC 295. That would have been a great card. There's probably some truth to that. And why would they rush Yuri Prohaska back to fight in November instead of December when he's coming off a big injury? I just did another video on Yuri and Alex Pereira just before this. Yuri relinquished his belt because it was most likely he felt like he was not going to fight in 2023. So why are they rushing that fight to be on 295 as opposed to having this one there? So I think there might be some truth to Colby Covington saying that Jon Jones didn't want him on this card. So I think he's right about that. The other thing Colby's right about is he played his cards perfectly here. I mean, if we're going off merit, Colby Covington does not deserve this title shot. He's been out for a while. He hasn't fought since the Jorge Masvidal fight. And one thing that I always see people talk about with that layoff, by the way, is that they never bring up the fact that there was some legal stuff with him and Masvidal. So obviously Colby couldn't take the fight when there's a pending legal case going on. So, you know, people got to remember that when they talk about the layoff, but still, he played this perfectly, and he's getting the shot over Bilal Muhammad, who I think a lot of people felt based off merit should have got this title shot. So Colby's kind of right about that as well too. And the third thing I'll mention here about this fight, and don't worry, we will get into the fight itself, is this whole is Colby a draw thing. Now look, I think it's very hard to be a draw in the UFC period. I think there's very few fighters that really do draw in a big gate, whether it's ticket sales or pay-per-views and all that. But the UFC obviously feels like Colby's a draw for two reasons. Number one, he's headlining the last card of the year, the last pay-per-view of the year. That's got to be a big deal to a certain degree, right? If they're doing this at T-Mobile, they're saving the best card for last. So obviously the UFC thinks Colby's a draw, and they also think he's a draw because he's been out for, you know, more than a year and he's getting this title shot here. So all the naysayers about Colby not being a draw, the UFC obviously thinks differently, and that's why they're giving him this opportunity. So that's another thing where I think Colby is right here in terms of what he's been saying in the media and all that. Now let's get to the fight itself. Really interesting matchup here. Of course, Edwards winning the belt over Kamaru Usman last year and then defeating him again in the trilogy fight. Quick tail of the tape between these two, 21-3 for Leon Edwards, 17-3 for Colby Covington. Interesting, they both have 3 losses. 32 years old to 35, so Colby going to be a little bit older. 6'2" to 5'11", nice height advantage there, and a 2-inch reach advantage for Leon as well. So that will be very interesting. Leon Edwards, like I mentioned there, getting the win over Kamaru Usman at UFC 286. That was back in March, so not a huge layoff here for Leon. He did fight this year. Majority decision. I think that's a key thing here. And again, I will do a more in-depth preview of this when I do my early look preview of this fight. But that was a close fight. Like, I thought that could have gone either way. And I feel like people kind of forget that. Now, you look at the media scorecards here in MMA decisions. Majority did feel like Edwards won, but a lot of people had it a draw, and even 2 people had it for Usman. So I bring that up because, you know, people talk about Leon beating Usman again. That second fight was much closer. The first fight was actually close too, prior to the head kick. In fact, Usman was winning. He was on his way to winning a decision, and Leon Edwards got the one of the best knockouts of all time and knocked out Kamaru Usman late in that fight. So he's on a roll right now. Confidence is at an all-time high. Of course, Colby Covington has 2 losses to Kamaru Usman. So if you're Leon Edwards, you got to be feeling good about this and the fact that he's been a lot more active. So in terms of fights themselves, if you look at it here, Colby Covington, his last fight was against Jorge Masvidal in March of 2020. 2022. Leon has had 2 fights since then. So if you think about it, I mean, people talk about the layoff. Leon's only got 2 fights. Colby, yeah, he hasn't been as active, but if you look at like the overall over the last couple of years, I bet it's kind of similar, because there was a point when Leon didn't fight that much. And again, something that people forget when it comes to optics is Leon was in the UK and COVID was going on. He couldn't leave and take a lot of these opportunities, including the first title fight with Kamaru Usman, which was actually, yeah, was he supposed to fight Usman? I was trying to remember. Well, the Chimaev fights for sure, but he missed out on a lot of opportunities because of the whole COVID thing. So there's all that. But yeah, again, Leon, nice role right now, has yet to lose a fight since the Kamaru Usman fight in December of 2015. So Colby with a tall task here. Bunch of good wins in between there. Luque, Dos Anjos, had the no contest with Bilal Muhammad, beat Nate Diaz. No, we're not going to count that. That's not a quality win, but the 2 wins over Usman for sure are what Leon has got him the title and got him all his recognition here. So really interesting matchup, really good stand up, and yeah, really curious about this fight. Covington, like I said, still has given, prior to fighting prior to Leon Edwards fighting Kamaru Usman for the second and third time, Colby Covington had given Kamaru Usman his toughest tests in the octagon. Colby did get finished by Usman in the first fight, but that first fight was very close. It was, I thought it was at least 2-2. You could maybe go 3-1 for Usman, but I thought it was, even going into that 5th round, and then Usman finishing it. Razor close fight. And then the rematch with Usman was also very close. I think the majority of media members did have that fight for Colby Covington in that one, Kamaru Usman. But I want to say that it was fairly close. So Usman defeats Covington in the rematch there. I'm going to say majority did think that Usman won. Yeah, majority thought that Usman won, but some also scored it a draw. So again, it was a bit of a closer fight, but I don't think there was any like controversial decision there as far as that. And let's be honest here, a lot of Colby's wins have not aged very well. Masvidal not in the UFC. Tyron Woodley retired shortly after that. Well, didn't retire, but went over to boxing. Robbie Lawler, just retired recently. You've got Dos Anjos, who knows what weight class he's in these days. And then et cetera, et cetera. So it's been a little bit disappointing from the Colby fan standpoint of him not being as active. We would like to see him compete. So this is a good test here. Let's call the optics of this too. This is it. This is the last opportunity Colby Covington's going to have at a title shot, unless this fight is a controversial decision or some weird finish that or it ends in like a no contest or draw or something. But Colby's got to go for broke. Like, I'm really curious to see what happens if this does not go well for Colby, where he goes from here. He's 35. He's hardly fought over the last couple of years. Like, that's not good optics here if he loses this fight. Now, if he wins, we've seen the trend this year. There's been some, upsets. You have Sean O'Malley over Sterling. You had Strickland over Adesanya. People are talking about this maybe being the next one. We'll see. I think it's close. I do. I think the odds for this one, and I forgot to do this in the other videos, I think the odds for this one will probably have Leon at like a 2-1 favorite, just because he's been more active and he has the 2 wins over Usman, a fighter that Colby failed to defeat 2 times. So I could kind of see that happening here, but I think it's going to be close. I think Colby will do better than people expect, but I do ultimately think Leon will get it done, and I'm going to take Leon by decision in this fight. I think it's going to be close. I think it's going to be like the Usman fights. I'm curious to see if Colby's able to implement the wrestling here. I'm curious to see how he does in the stand-up, because it's not like Colby's been sitting on the couch. One of the things that he is very much credited for is his cardio and work ethic in the gym. And, again, maybe he's getting better. And maybe there's something to this theory as well that, because he's not fighting as much, maybe he's not taking as much damage. Granted, I don't think Leon took a ton of damage in his last fight either, but I do wonder about these things. I think this is a very interesting fight and great way to cap off 2023 for the UFC here. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. First and foremost, what do you think about this headlining UFC 296? Was this the fight to make? Is this a fight you're very excited for? I'm curious about that. What do you think about the whole UFC 295 conspiracy? Why do you think this fight took so long to book? I want to hear that as well. And of course, I want to hear your prediction for this fight. Let me know in the comments. I will definitely be doing an early look preview of this fight coming up here pretty soon. Also got the pros picks out already for this fight, because I knew this fight was most likely going to happen. So make sure you look for those. There's 2 parts out. I'll probably get part 3 out next week if you guys are curious about that, because I've been asking fighters for months about this matchup. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, and I guess Threads, and all these other ones. Everything's always Lynch on Sports. That's how you can find me. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.